Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar. Thanks for joining us. My name is Andrew Townsend and I'm marketing operations here at Smarty. Today's webinar is about how to select the right geocoding tool, and we're very excited to just dive in. However, before we do so, let me go over just a couple of housekeeping items. One, this webinar will be recorded, so we will get a copy of it emailed out to everyone who registered. So you can be looking for that in your email inbox if you need to step out early or just watch it again. We also encourage people to send this on if they find it useful. Email that on to other people that you think may benefit from the information. To interact with our presenter and other audience members, feel free to use the chat and the Q&A features inside of the Zoom webinar interface. That's one of the best ways you can get something out of the webinar, is by asking a question specific to your needs so that we can address it and make sure that you're getting out of the webinar what you were hoping to get out of it. All right, so our presenter today, we have Wes Arnold, Product Marketing Manager, with us. We're very excited to hear what he has to share, or at least I am. I don't know about you guys. Maybe I assume you're excited if you're
Glad
here.
you're excited.
So without further ado, Wes Arnold.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to each of you for being here for our webinar on 8 questions to ask when selecting a geocoding API. We know that selecting a geocoding tool can be kind of a daunting task, and so we're presenting this webinar to maybe help you determine which are the important questions to ask when choosing. Okay, let's talk. We're going to go right into it, and we're going to talk about location intelligence. And location intelligence is more than just visualization on maps, although it can encompass or include visualization on maps. It's really an aggregation of location data, taking all that data and using it to inform your decisions. So I've written down better business decisions. It helps you create better business decisions, but it could also be maybe government policies, potentially a better health solutions. For example, I've included a map of the past. This is actually John Snow's map of back in 1858. He used location data to help inform a decision on what to do about a cholera outbreak. And so I know it's used quite often as an example, but it is like the first example of location data informing action. So think of all the ways that we submit location data today. Perhaps through my Garmin watch, maybe my phone, my Mac, even our cars are producing location data. And all of that location data can be used and leveraged to make better decisions, make perhaps our decisions in our business more profitable, make it more convenient for our customers. All this can be solved through location intelligence. Now, the starting point for location intel is geocoding. And geocoding is taking the latitude and longitude coordinates, taking latitude and longitude coordinates and assigning them to maybe a physical address, a city, a subdivision, a point of interest. But not all geocoding services are the same. And so how do you determine what is going to be best for you? Where do you start? And that's where we lead into our first question. Question number 1 is, does the geocoding API include address verification? Now, why is this important? Well, I know it's rather cliche to say, but garbage in, garbage out, right? Whatever you put into your geocoding tool is what you're going to get out. So if you're putting bad addresses through a geocoding utility, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of no matches, which we're going to cover a little bit later. And you're just not going to get as much use out of that geocoding tool. It's imperative that you use some sort of address verification to run your addresses through first, clean them up, and then send them through a geocoding tool. And built-in address verification just simplifies this process. So why is that? Well, instead of having to take all of your address data, run it through an address verification tool, wait for that to be done, save it, upload it to your geocoding tool, wait for it to be done there, you can just get it all done in one fell swoop. You just you upload one file and it's done at the same time. So look for a geocoding service with built-in address verification. Question number 2 is, does the API provide as advertised accuracy? So I know this is number 3 on the list there, but precision really boosts profits and it cuts costs. So if you're wanting to be as efficient as you can, make sure you're getting a good match rate. What is a match rate? A match rate is how many addresses is the geocoding tool actually going to be able to locate? And also going along with that, what is the level of accuracy that you're getting? That is paramount because the more, like we said, the better the precision, the better the profits and the better the data you're going to get. And rooftop geocoding is really the gold standard of geocoding. So that term has kind of been bandied about in the industry a little bit. So, rooftop might have been considered, like zip plus 4 might have been considered rooftop at one point. Street level could have been considered rooftop. So what does it actually mean? Well, we're going to talk about nowadays, some places call and some vendors call parcel centroid rooftop. So what is really the difference between rooftop versus parcel centroid? You can see here on the right, I've included a lot that is actually not too far from Smarty headquarters, just down in Salem, Utah. And notice the parcel is long and skinny. And this is typical of that area where the home is actually at the front of the lot, of the parcel, but the center of the parcel is quite a distance away from the actual structure. And now, why is that important? Well, let's say you're a P&C insurer and you're trying to determine how close that actual house is to potentially a river or like a riverbank or floodplain or a fire zone. You really need to know the exact distance from those risks. Same with telecom. You want to know exactly where that house is. If you're running fiber optic cable to that house, you don't want a parcel centroid geocode. You want true rooftop geocoding. Now, another thing to look for is cascading results, and we'll look at what does that actually mean. So it should be noted that Smarty's US rooftop geocoding will position 95% of US addresses at the true rooftop level. But if it doesn't find a rooftop level, what it does is it will cascade down to the next best level. So it will, if it doesn't find rooftop, it'll go to parcel centroid. If it doesn't find that, it'll go to street address interpolated. If it doesn't find that, zip plus 4. Now, you may not need rooftop geocoding. Who knows? We've listed some use cases on the right there that where rooftop geocoding is preferable, like risk exposure, telco, mobile marketing. Those you really have to have very, very precise geocodes. But further down the list where we're talking about potentially demographics or something, maybe you don't need that. Maybe zip plus 4 is just fine. So that's one question to consider: is exactly what accuracy are you getting with that provider, and what do you actually need? This one's a really important one. How are no matches handled? So no matches are when an address isn't found. And really, they should be indicated rather than just guessed at. Because if they're just guessing at what the geocodes would be for that address, you're getting false positives, and false positives create chaos. No, so chaos or havoc, whichever one. But we'll look at what a false positive can do. So here, we've typed in 2335 South, US 89, into Google Maps. Now, US 89 is an alias address for Smarty headquarters. Smarty headquarters is at 2335 South, State Street, Provo, Utah. But State Street is also US 89. If you enter it that way, however, Google Maps will return 2335 US 89 Mapleton, Utah, which is actually 5 miles away. So that's a big difference. So imagine if you are trying to get extremely accurate data, and what you get back is you got geocodes back for this address, but unless you're a machine, it's really hard to determine exactly where those geocodes are at. So you just assume that it's good data, right? You're acting on, but that you end up acting on poor data. So with it being 5 miles away from the search address, you're getting inaccurate data, and you're starting to act on that. What happens with Smarty is if Smarty can't identify the address, it will come back as an unknown address. And that's great because now that sounds funny, but it's actually a good thing because you are able to deal with those unknown addresses in potentially a manual way, like a manual exception, to pull those out and say, okay, well, it didn't identify these. Maybe we run them again, or we run them with a different tool, or we do it manually. But at least you have the ability to act on those. Whereas with guessed data and false positives, you're acting on poor data, which you don't want. Number 4 are sub-address geocodes offered. What is a sub-address? So a sub-address could be the apartments, storefronts at a strip mall, suites at a business park. You can see on the right here as an illustration of what we're talking about, where this is University Mall, not too far from here. And with a different provider, what you get is the one geocode. That's the gold pin there. And you get just that one geocode to cover the whole thing. But with Smarty Streets, you get sub-addresses where you can get each storefront. And that increases the relevance of your location data, and it helps inform your policies more and your decisions. So a question to ask yourself is, would sub-addresses be beneficial for your organization? Maybe you don't need that, like we were talking about before. Maybe you just need zip+4 or street. But that's an important question. And how expansive is the provider's sub-address geocode coverage, if they even do it? All right, number 5, what are the API's capacity and speed capabilities? How many geocodes can you really process per second? Now, this is vital because nobody really wants to wait around for a long time for their geocodes to be completed. And so asking this question of how many can I process is vital. There are providers out there who basically give you a chunk of processing power, and you're responsible for allocating that processing power. So you get this kind of limited bandwidth, and then in addition to that, you're responsible for going in and saying, ooh, right now I'm going to run a large batch of geocodes, so I'm going to take up a larger chunk of that processing power and allocate it to my project. And that's difficult because you have to remember, I got to go back in and I've got to turn that down so that if somebody else is running a project, it doesn't compete with that chunk that they give me of processing power. So another thing that developers really don't like is if they're turned into somewhat of an accountant to have to predict the usage they're using for geocodes. Perhaps they're worried about going over a quarter, during the quarter for their allocation. Is there going to be an overage charge? Am I going to use them all? Am I going to get my value? One of the things that Smarty does allow is unlimited geocoding. So you can purchase a package where you have unlimited usage. So you don't have to worry about allocating. Okay, well, I think I'm going to use X number of geocodes this quarter. So we better prepare for that, or we might go over. You don't have to worry about it. You just turn it on, it works. Another thing is, another question to ask is, can that provider allocate more resources for your project as it's building? Perhaps you don't know exactly how much you're going to use, and you have to just hope that the provider can handle it. We actually at Smarty had a customer recently who asked for 70,000 lookups per second. Now, that's huge, but we're able to handle it because of the way that we're set up. So ask yourself, can they handle that many geocodes? It doesn't have to be 70,000, but can they handle the bandwidth that I need? And are they going to make me responsible for allocating processing power, or can I just turn it on and let it run? Okay, number 6, are there on-premise and cloud-based options? Now, why would you need an on-premise solution? There are plenty of places that need on-premise, particularly if they have specific security needs. Sometimes their corporation requires it. They don't want anything. They want to manage that on site. And also they want high speed processing. Now, this one is maybe a little bit of is maybe a little bit of a smoke screen. You can get high-speed processing from a cloud-based solution now. Particularly when we were talking about the bandwidth earlier, a lot of corporations think I'm going to get, maybe it's old thinking or something of I'm going to get higher speeds with on-premise, but that's not necessarily a problem anymore for cloud-based, because if the provider can spool up more resources as you're putting on demand, it's not necessarily an issue. So, and there are pros and cons to on-premise. Ask yourself, are you prepared for the extra cost? Typically, the costs are about 3 times higher than cloud solutions. So that's because you need more infrastructure and you need more staffing to maintain that infrastructure. So that's something that's really important to consider. Are you prepared to pay those extra costs? Number 7, is use with third-party base maps permitted? Now, mapping is sometimes essential for interpreting location data. Perhaps you're wanting to present that to some stakeholders that you want to show exactly how maybe a telco or a cell tower is covering, or you want to show where a franchise, what coverage that would have as far as potential customers. Now, Google only allows use of their geocodes with Google Maps, so that's something to be aware of. So whatever solution you choose, ask yourself, is use with a GIS platform permissible? For example, ArcGIS, QGIS, BatchGeo, we've listed a few here. It should be worth mentioning that Smarty actually has a QGIS plugin for our US Rooftop geocoding product. You can use single addresses all you want. That's free to use. If you're wanting to batch geocode and you have a Smarty US Rooftop geocoding subscription, that is also allowed. So you can just use it as a layer on your map. You put in your batch, it geocodes it right to your layer. Number 8, would additional location data services be helpful? This is something to consider. Perhaps we talked about bad data earlier as far as bad address data. One of the tools that's very useful for addressing this problem is address autocomplete. It helps prevent bad address data from reaching your database in the first place. As you're typing, as a user is typing in an address, it serves up validated, standardized addresses that they can select and then complete the web form. So that's helping them do less and helping you increase web form submissions. My personal address, for example, is 45 characters long. That's including spaces. So I have to type out 45 characters, but with Smarty's US address autocomplete, I just type in 4 characters, just the street numeral, and I actually get my address served up to the top of the list. I click on it and it populates the web form and it's done. And now the person who's receiving that data knows that that data is coming in standardized and formatted. It's clean. They don't have to worry about it. Also, something to consider is reverse geocoding, which transforms latitude and longitude coordinates into addresses. Now, something we've heard recently about is people combining those two to make what I call a zero-key autocomplete, where reverse geocoding will get the lat-long coordinates that they have, maybe from their phone, and then it combines that with address autocomplete to serve up that address as the first choice. That way, they don't even have to really type anything. It's just there. That it might propose, are you at this address? They click on it and it comes in standardized, formatted, and the data is clean. Also, another thing to consider is a new product that Smarty has is US Master Address List. So this is a complete list of addresses with geocodes. Perhaps you're a telecom customer or a fiber optic company that is trying to figure out what addresses are there that we could actually service. Maybe you need them for 3 different states or a region. When I say region, like maybe the Northwest states or New England, we have those addresses available and they come with geocodes. Now, in summary, we talked about, is address verification built in? That just makes it way easier. Running less processes, it's combined, it runs at the same time. Does it provide as advertised accuracy? Are you really getting Rooftop geocodes or are you getting Parcel Centroid? How are no matches handled? Are they upfront with telling you that an address wasn't found? Are subaddress geocodes offered? So business suites, maybe mobile home parks, things like that. Are those offered with your geocoding? What are the capacity and speed capabilities? Do they make you responsible for allocating processing power? Are they able to spool up on demand as things go? Are there on-premise and cloud-based options? Do you need on-premise, or is cloud-based just fine? Is use with third-party base maps permitted? For example, with QGIS, like we mentioned, with possibly ArcGIS? And would additional location data services be helpful? Now, we hope that you guys have, these questions are helping you to formulate a way to go about evaluating a geocoding solution. And this webinar was actually based off of our ebook that we produced by the same title, 8 Questions to Ask When Selecting a Geocoding API. If you're interested, it has a lot more information contained within it. So go to this address and you can actually sign up to get that geocoding ebook. It'll just download and you can read up a little bit more on this topic. So with that, I will turn the time over to Andrew. We'll actually address some questions and answers. If you guys have some Q&A, go ahead and submit them.
Fantastic, Wes, has been very useful. This ebook, I'll get a link of it into the chat in just a moment. A couple of questions here. If I'm already a Smarty customer, I'm using the address verification. How difficult is it to set up the geocoding API?
Oh, that's a very good question. It's actually very, very easy. Because the API, the geocoding API is kind of a misnomer. It's actually using the US Street API that Smarty Streets uses, but it's providing the Rooftop geocodes attached to that. So you really just have to change a little bit of code, not even like, I'm talking like maybe one little teeny section, like a little word, and you'll get the geocoding results. Now, that's if you have a subscription, right? So if you have a subscription, don't worry about the implementation. Implementation is actually super easy.
Okay, excellent. Now with with the free account for address validation, I can get 250 free lookups a month. And even like the first time I use it, I can get 1,000 lookups for free for that first month. If I want to run some tests on geocoding, you know, it's a different product. Is there a way to perform a test with a trial or something like that?
Yeah, we do handle the trials a little bit differently because of the volume you probably want to run through a geocoder. So if you go to our geocoding product page, so US Rooftop Geocoding, at the bottom there's a form you can fill out that will go directly to our sales, and they will reach out to you to give you a trial. And they basically like weigh your needs as far as how many you need and how they can best help you run that trial.
Excellent. And more questions, I guess, from people that are already using our other products. With geocodes, do I still get all of the other metadata points? And can I get other ones like congressional district or things like that?
Yeah, so so if you're running geocoding, like I mentioned before, you get the US Street API. And with that US Street API, you get a bunch of metadata points that come with it. So I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but there's 45 different metadata points that you get along with those Rooftop geocodes.
Okay. Now there are other geocoding providers, obviously, but when you're asking these 8 questions, Smarty's the only one that meets all of 8 of these points. But if you don't care about having the best geocoding, I guess you could go to others. Anyway, just
that's true.
Trying to be non-biased.
We do love our product. I mean, we feel very strongly that it's the best value in the industry. We were recently at a trade show where we were approaching insurers, right? And when we would talk to them about what they were getting as far as pricing and volume and the unlimited capability, they were really floored as far as the value that they were getting with our geocoding. Plus premium, it really is just premium geocoding for the best value in the industry.
All right, great. That's the end of our presentation. Thanks everybody for joining us. Don't forget to click on that link if you haven't. Thanks, Wes, for your time. This is fantastic, and I hope you guys all have a great day.